The way I was parented is showing up in how I'm parenting. Fear is this incredible, valuable teacher. Let's not run away from it. What I am is a strong mirror. We are all so afraid that we're completely alone.
Welcome to the Vitalist podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist.
Micheline is an integral master coach with over 25 years of expertise in guiding individuals through profound personal and professional transformation. She holds a master's degree in educational counseling, is a certified professional coach through the International Coaching Federation, and serves as senior faculty at Integral Coaching Canada. Her approach integrates cutting-edge research in neuroscience, peak performance, and mind-body connection with advanced training through the Flow Research Collective and certification as a safe and sound listening therapist. Welcome to the podcast, Mish. How would you describe the work you do to our community?
I support individuals by releasing fear from their body so that they can walk in life as love.
So let's go back to that moment of transitioning from an athlete, counselor, into a life coach. Who was Mish at that point?
Yeah, so I would say first it was the athlete, and it was coaching athletics. And at that time, I was doing child protection. And that was now at 24 years old. I was investigating child abuse, physical, emotional, sexual. And it required a lot out of me, just 23 years old and going in and doing these interviews. And I had case studies that were like 30 years old because I was French speaking. So I was up in Canada and I was in a small town that had French speaking population. And so, I saw the generations of abuse, like the grandfather to the children, to the grandchildren, to the great-grandchildren. It clearly became aware that like abuse happens through the generations. And so from there, then I had my own kids and did not want to go back into that because it's not a job you can let go of at the end of the day. And I was always also a young mom, and I was struggling with even how do I raise kids? How do I be the best mom? And then of course, my own patterns show up. Right. So now I'm starting to see my generational patterns showing up in my parenting and making the connection of this gets passed down through generations. Now, it's not physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, but it's still the way I was parented is showing up in how I'm parenting. So I was I stayed at home with my kids most of the time. I did work part-time as a school counselor at that time in the Waldorf school. And I quickly started seeing the patterns that the teachers were experiencing with the kids. Teachers often complaining about the behavior of the kids. They're so disrespectful. They're so this, they're so that. It was like they were just overwhelmed. They didn't know how to manage all of the behaviors of these children. And so this was a moment in time for me personally where I was like, okay, wait a second. Parents are wanting to blame teachers. Teachers are wanting to blame parents. Both of them are wanting to blame the administration or the school. But when I started hearing people start blaming the children, that again, as a child protection worker, as a school counselor, who I truly believe I am an advocate for children. That is like a deep calling for me. I had to step in and say, wait a second, it's not the child. It's not the teacher. These teachers are, 20-year well-trained, either Montessori school or Waldorf school. What I started to notice, it's the connection between the two. And that's when I started going, okay, there's something in this relationship that is not allowing for the growth to happen. It's stuck. There's a stagnancy, and it's just this constant repeating of the patterns. Now, I was a school counselor. I had 3 kids. I could handle all of the troubles of the behaviors that the kids would present at school. And then I'd get in the car and I hadn't even left the school parking lot and I was screaming at my own kids, right? So it's like, I didn't know how to create this change. I was stuck in my own repeating patterns as a parent. But I started to ask the question, how do we create change? How do we create change? Because I could see these patterns in child protection, now in teachers, and in the parents that would come to me. And yet I didn't know how to create change for myself at that time. So when you ask a powerful question, life has a way of giving you a very powerful lesson. And so I've been through many, many lessons to answer that question. I homeschooled my kids for a while. I went through a very bitter divorce. And through that process, there's a lot in there, but coming out the other side was like, okay, I really need to work with the adults. And I need to work in the change process. And I need to support them in how to create change because I've now learned it at a very visceral level.
With changing behavior, are we trying to change the behavior or are we trying to change something deeper that's driving the behavior? So like what in your view as a coach, what's the difference between behavior change and something that is a profound transformation that's going to break generational cycles?
Precisely why I found integral theory. Because it's the wholeness of it all. When I'm working with individuals, I'm not just looking at behaviors. I'm looking at the complexity of the whole human being. And so in the integral methodology, we have 6 different lenses that we're looking at. And it is based on Eastern philosophies. So I know you're Qigong, and I know Keiko's done Tai Chi, right? And when you think about that, you put your body into a position and you're holding a position and you're breathing through a position, but you know that your teacher will come around and go, oh, wait a second, let's just move this to here and see how that feels. So it's such a small and subtle movement that is where my clients feel the profound shift. And so that's the kind of work that I do with my clients. It's really subtle. It happens underneath the psychological immune system. So we all know we have a physical immune system. We have a psychological immune system. This is why, New Year's resolutions don't work. I'm going to do this and I'm going to change this and and it's like an elastic band and it gets stretched and then all of a sudden, whack. Right? That psychological immune system brings you back to the pattern that you know and love, that you want, you know and love and is needed to keep you safe. So when I'm working with individuals, I'm looking at spiritual health. We're looking at emotional health, behavioral health, interpersonal health. We're looking at cognitive, moral. We're looking at interiority, how to look within yourself. Also exteriority, how do we are interacting with others? How do we have these relationships with all of us, the integration of all of it?
Where do you start?
With a client, it always starts with where do they want to create change? What is what I would call their topic? And that's something that I craft with them together. I say, let's put the lump of clay in between us and we'll begin to take shape around what is this topic. Because as anyone knows, creating change, it's a very painful process. To be stuck in your pattern, doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting a different result, hoping for a different result, wanting a different result, it's very painful. There's a lot of suffering in change. And so helping to name that topic that feels deeply profound and accurate for the client is the first place we start. And then I use the metaphor of that's the pebble that will be thrown into the waters of your life, and it will have ripple effects across your whole system. So that's where it starts. That's where I'm gathering all of the information. I'm a powerful questioner, but it's through the powerful questions that I get to know where there's a stuckness, where the what I would say is the fear is trapped in their body, where they keep bumping up against, I can't quite, can't get past this. And so that is always what's leading me, and that is led through my own body. So part of being an integral coach is we're always training the coach to use their body as the instrument of coaching.
So I understand you've worked with people in over 30 countries.
34.
So you're working with people in all sorts of different cultures, regions. They're raised in different environments. Is there commonality that crosses cultures?
Well, again, everything I believe can come down to fear or love.
Okay.
Right? Those two are always sitting right next to each other. You can't have one without the other. Fear is not something we get rid of. Fear is not something we will live without. Fear is not something that we get to put in a box and hide it away and never to look at it again. It is as important and as valuable as having love, being with love. In honesty, I would say, how do we love fear? That's really what a lot of the work that I'm doing is recognizing that fear is this incredible, valuable teacher. Now, fear can show up in so many ways, right? Fear can show up as anger. Fear can show up as rage. Fear can show up as depression. Fear can show up as anxiety. Fear can show up as what now we're getting into more like the autonomic system, right? How does fear show up in the body? Because when we're in a fear state, we are in a defensive state. So when I look at all of the coaches that I've trained in all of these different countries and clients that I've had, it always comes down to what is that particular fear and how does it show up as their unique signature. You know, what I could say is there are competing belief systems, right? So if we have this topic that I want to move into, there's always an anchor line, right? There's an anchor that's stuck under the water, and this is the boat that wants to move forward. And you know what an anchor is like, right? It's like ball
creates
and chain.
A lot of resistance.
Yes,
that we fight against.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we could, we have this belief, if we could just be more disciplined, if I could just be stronger, if I could just resist more. And actually now it's becoming common knowledge that that is not what is needed. What is needed is to look at the resistance. Resistance is, again, part of the fear line, and it is the competing commitment. This is the work of Dr. Robert Kegan out of Harvard. The competing commitment is down this line. And so what I'm looking and listening for and asking questions around is, how does this resistance show up? How can we learn from this resistance? What's in this fear? What's in the anchor? That's a valuable piece of information.
I think a really important difference, I think, in the work that you do, and something that I really want to point out for the people listening is, and we see this with our clients all the time, like you said, we all experience fear. Fear is there. It's quite intelligent. It's there to serve a purpose, right? There, we got to love our fear because it's doing something to protect us. It's a solution to some sort of problem. However, I feel like fear can be that thing that takes you out of the body. So how does that show up in the people you're coaching with? Like, how do you work with the people that are very stuck in their heads and they're so disconnected from their body where they can't register or acknowledge that anchor into the body because they're so disconnected?
Especially with new coaches I train, I'm always letting them know numb is a feeling. I don't feel is giving us information, right? I don't know where I feel it. And so again, it's really a very slow process. And so what I can do, because of my own somatic awareness, understanding, and my own connection to my body, I can feel and sense where they're at. And we always meet the client exactly where they're at. I am not pushing anyone to anywhere. As a coach, I hold the very strong belief that you have all the answers within you. I am not the authority on you. You are. And what I am is a strong mirror for you to be reflected back in a deep, honest way what your patterns are that are showing up. And that's done just through questions. It's simply done through questions. And in integral theory, we use metaphors. The mind, as you know, subconscious works in imagery. This is very Jungian, right? That the more imagery we can bring forth, the more we're unlocking the subconscious. So I come up with metaphors to help identify where is the client currently in their topic and where do they want to be in their topic. And so what is the metaphors that accurately can name that? So for an example, let me see, the accomplished prairie dog. right? So there's a client that is digging holes. Maybe this is the right one. Pop the head up. Nope. Go back down. Dig. Like going and working and hard in life. Very accomplished at digging holes. Very accomplished. But it's a constant digging. It's a constant following another path. It's constantly not sure where and what is hers. So that's an example. Her new way of being. Let's just say the dedicated heart compass or the compassionate heart compass. So now this is supporting, because the heart compass is more like, okay, what is my North Star? What is my north direction? Where do I feel the sensations in my body? How do I connect to that inner compass that's always guiding me? Right? So it's just, you can see the gap between accomplished prairie dog and, devoted heart compass. And with the work that I'm doing is I'm just building the skills. I'm building capacities to help open and awaken the heart compass. And again, that might be a 2% move for this client. It might be a 10% move. It might be a 22% move. It doesn't matter. No matter which percentage happens, it's still for her where she's at and what she needs. So these metaphors help with the subject to object move. Because you asked me, where do we start? Start with a topic. The next thing is we have to get to know the current way. If we cannot see where we currently are, we can't change it. So we have to be in the arena of change. And the only way to do that is to, our lives are very subjective. We're just walking around in our lives. But how do we make it from the subjective to bring it more objective? And that's getting to know that accomplished prairie dog. And what is the accomplished prairie dog? Behaviors, beliefs, assumptions, emotions, right? There's all sorts of detangling, kind of like you guys detangling the nervous system, right? It's like we have to understand this and see this, because if we can't see it, we can't change it.
So when you learned this approach, what was the most powerful question that someone asked you that allowed you to see a blind spot?
What I can remember during my training was, we're, as new coaches, we're paired up. And one of my biggest struggles is disorganization. I often think, ADHD I would have been diagnosed with that as a kid, right? I couldn't sit still in class. I couldn't focus on much. My body had to move in order to learn anything. And so I have a belief that I'm not smart, right? And I'm not smart because I didn't fit into this societal structure called school. Didn't work for me. And so this belief that I've carried into my adult life was painful for me, because I also looked around and went, oh my God, I'm so disorganized, and then judged myself for being disorganized or messing up on things or missing things. And I remember this new coach, again, brand new coaches, so they weren't, and she just said, well, why don't you get an organizer? Like I just saw red, like I was just like rage came out of me, not directed at her, because then I also have societal conditioning that says rage is not okay. So I shut it down, but it came through in everything else, right? Like we all think we're hiding our behavioral patterns from one another. No, your partner, your children, your friends, your colleagues, your boss, they see your behavioral patterns. It's like the cat that sits on our face. We don't know it's there, but everybody else sees it. And that was so important for me because it helped me to see my rage. And it wasn't until the teacher, my dear, sweet Laura Devine, who was my teacher and the creator of the integral coaching method, she has passed. She came over to me and she helped me look at my rage. And this was all part of my healing process to actually connect to the rage that I had as a child. I had a lot of rage.
So when you say connect to rage, what does that feel like or look like in a coaching situation? How would someone connect to something that they don't want to feel necessarily?
Well, let's just continue to use me as an example.
Sure.
So, I mean, this coach was just like well, maybe I'll just give her some, a simple tool, because it works for her. An organizer doesn't work for me. So it was a very innocent, it is so not how we coach, by the way. This was a student. But it was a moment that had me feel my rage. So I particularly was angry. Now, I didn't think anybody would notice, but of course, my highly skilled teacher and mentor looked at me and was, as I was talking through my teeth, she was able to come over and ask me a few questions around my rage, around my anger. And of course, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt a lot of humiliation that I let that be shown. And this is what happens with so many of all of us humans. We're actually embarrassed by these patterns. We don't want to, we judge them terribly. These are parts of ourselves that we try to keep very well hidden, and they're not hidden. So when I'm working with a client, whether it's a student that I'm training or whether it's my own private clients, it's the witnessing. All I'm holding in the truth and honesty is I'm holding the loving witness. Because all of our deepest emotions, they go back to our childhood. They're I mentioned the societal structures. We have cultural conditioning, and then we have parenting programming. So you put all those three together, and that's all telling us how we should be. Parental programming happens when I had rage as a little kid. My parents had no idea how to deal with that. It was overwhelming. It was scary. They were afraid. I had a babysitter lock me out of a room, and I was alone, screaming and yelling and pounding on a door for hours. I know, like you can feel that, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly, my clients will name these emotions, and all I can offer is the loving witness to be with it. Let's not run away from it. Let's not try to escape the body right now. Let's just see if we can breathe with it right now, no matter what the pain is, no matter what the suffering is. Because if I go back to now, like the autonomic signature, these patterns that are trapped in our bodies, in our autonomic system, what we're missing in our lives, in our world right now, is the loving witness, is the connection to be able to go, let that energetic pattern go all the way through the system so it can be released. Because our energy in our autonomic nervous system is water. It's supposed to move. It's supposed to just flow. And so an emotion comes up and then we clamp it down. Now we are creating ice in the system. Or we're creating steam and it's starting to boil over in our system. And we do that. We've been doing this since we were children, again and again and again, because it's not okay to show my anger. So I'm going to clamp it down. Meanwhile, everyone can see the steam rising off my body. And I think nobody can tell, right?
Yeah.
And so by little step, in the relationship with me as their coach, I hold the space for them to come just a little bit closer to that emotion, to that steam, to that ice. And that's what we used to do as a community. That's what we used to do in family. That's what we used to do in culture. But we are so isolated that we don't have anyone to offer that to us. We all know, intellectually, we all know we're all connected. Yes, we're all connected, right? We can all talk about that. But at a deep level, we are all so afraid that we're completely alone. And when we begin to actually, we need each other, and yet we are so afraid of each other. So herein lies the problem.
What allows me to heal by being in connection, let's say with you or with nature or with my partner or even with my dog?
So most of us are, I think, now well aware we have fight, flight, freeze as our kind of survival mechanisms. And those are kind of what we would consider autonomic signatures. For me, my particular signature would be get into fight. So here I am as a little kid. I have some anger. I fought. I fought my sisters. I fought my parents. I fought the neighborhood kids. I fought the big bully down the street. Like I fought a lot.
So just for our listeners who are not familiar with autonomic signatures, you go from a state of connection, something comes in and triggers you, and your automatic default is to go into fight. Mine would be to freeze. So everyone's going to have their default mode.
Right. So autonomics is simply that. It's automatic. So we don't really have a lot of choice in the matter. We're not conscious of the choice. It just automatically happens. So as I said, we have fight, flight, and freeze. In the Neurobiology of Connection, which is a book written by Gabriel, Kram, there are actually 12 different autonomic signatures. And not only we have the fight and the freeze, but we have other signatures like think of how we accommodate. Think of how we appease another person, right? So these are, I will say quite common, and that is an autonomic, it happens automatically. And then if we now are moving from steam and maybe we're getting into like a shutdown phase, like, okay, we're in pure danger. This is when we go into ice. And then how do we actually move through to be able to bring from a freeze ice state back into water is we have to allow for that full and complete spiral through the emotion. So I have a good friend and her son was actually not a long time ago, had a gang of kids show up at one of his parties from a different school. It turned into a bit of a gang fight with baseball bats, and he actually got a baseball bat across his head. I mean, it was some serious stuff. It was a really serious. And what I said is like, you make sure he tells that story over and over again. Let him live it, experience it, feel it, describe it, share it, so he can release the emotion. Because if we don't release the emotion, then on top of the fear comes the shame and the judgment and all the other things I should have, that we end up judging ourselves. And that just keeps that freeze state stuck.
So is there one practice or is there a single book that you hand to your clients that allow them to become more familiar with this sense of embodiment instead of like intellectual learning? Because that's been my biggest journey, is getting out of my head and into my body. So what's something that you see yourself recommending the most that our community can start to practice to build this sense of self?
To help understand the feeling of a controlled, defensive, autonomic state, let's just get connected with that part of us that wants to control. So I often just say, take your dominant hand and squeeze. Now, think about all the things that you want to control. Okay, so I want to control, let's just say, my kids. Gee, it would really be nice to control my partner. Or I would like to control, let's go even bigger. Like, let's really imagine like, oh my God, I would love to control politics. The food system, wouldn't you love to control the food system and change the way everybody's eating? Like, yes. So like, let's feel into that very strong controller inside of us all. Notice how your hand is kind of getting sore. So I invite the other hand to come in and just very, very lightly and gently place it as if you're holding a small child. Just let that, and then allow your other hand to slowly relax. This is giving yourself permission to release into your other hand. Notice your dominant hand, fingers, it's hard to open. They're tight, maybe even crampy, but slowly, if you keep at it, they'll kind of open. And that's the level of tenderness and connection and loving witness and being with that's required to start allowing ourselves, our bodies so want to relax and be in flow. And every client has ever said to me is like, oh yeah, my body wants to relax. Let the weight off of our shoulders and let the weight off of our chests. Get back into this fluidity, because that's when we can really start feeling that tender compassion and ultimately what I would say is love.
So to wrap up the session, Mish, I feel like one question that I love to ponder is, there's so much mystery, even in you feel this palpable shift in the physiology of a human being. And there's so much mystery in who is Mish, where did you come from, where are you going? What's one mystery about being human and the work that you do that you want to remain a mystery?
The transformative power of love has yet to truly been discovered on this planet. And when we do, as Pierre Teilhard Desjardins says, that is when we will discover fire for the first time again.
Beautiful. All right. Well, where can our people find you? And I know you have some offerings coming up. Where can they connect with you, learn about these offerings, continue this conversation with you if they feel inspired?
Yeah. So, I'm on all the platforms, of course. LinkedIn, I've written a number of articles there about being an embodied parent and an optimal leader. Instagram, Micheline Green _coach. I am starting a new secret podcast. So if you want to sign up for, it's called The Hearth. And it's about gathering around the fire to learn and listen to one another. And my website, michelinegreen.com. And that is, I have to spell it, MICHELINE, green like the color, .com. And I have a number of offerings over there. Free recording, all about claiming your calling. And those are the places.
Great. And we'll link it all below for our listeners.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mish. It was great to have you.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.